Sam and Olivia Walker were the kind of couple everyone admired. They lived in a beautiful home on a quiet street in the suburbs, where the well-kept lawns and perfectly trimmed hedges were the markers of the perfect life. Sam, a successful lawyer, had built his career from the ground up, and Olivia, an interior designer with an eye for detail, had carved out a name for herself in the world of luxury home makeover. Together, they were a power couple, successful, attractive, and seemingly without a care in the world. They had met in college, both studying in different fields, but their chemistry was undeniable. Sam had been drawn to Olivia's charm and infectious energy, while Olivia admired Sam's ambition and determination. Their connection had been instant, and after graduation they married quickly. They built their life together with a sense of ease, enjoying weekends away, dinners at fancy restaurants, and vacations to exotic places. Their friends admired their relationship, often commenting on how in sync they were, but what most people didn't see were the small moments of tension that had begun to creep into their marriage over the years. Sam had always trusted Olivia completely. She was beautiful, intelligent, and seemed genuinely devoted to him, but recently something had shifted. Olivia, who had once been so present and engaged in their relationship, seemed distant. She was always busy with work, often coming home late, and on weekends she would make plans with friends that Sam wasn't always invited to. At first, Sam thought it was just stress from her job, a sign that she was working hard to keep up with her growing clientele. But as time went on, he began to notice little things that didn't sit right with him. One evening, after returning home from a business trip, Sam noticed that Olivia had been unusually quiet. She was on her phone more than usual, tapping away at the screen while barely engaging with him. Sam chalked it up to her being preoccupied with work, but deep down, a nagging feeling was starting to grow. She had always been somewhat secretive with her phone, but it had never been a major concern until now. The texts and calls she received seemed to be from people Sam didn't recognize, names he hadn't heard before, all from numbers he didn't recognize. There was nothing overtly alarming about it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. One night, while Olivia was getting ready for bed, Sam sat down at the kitchen table and started going through some old receipts from their recent trip to the Bahamas. They had celebrated their 5th anniversary there, a trip they had both looked forward to for months. As he scanned through the receipts, something caught his eye. An unfamiliar name had shown up repeatedly in the records. The name was linked to expensive dinners, hotel stays, and even spa treatments that Sam hadn't remembered. The more he looked at the receipts, the more confused he became. He asked Olivia about it casually the next day, but she quickly dismissed it, claiming the name was someone from the hotel they had stayed at. Nothing to worry about. But something in Sam's gut told him that wasn't the whole story. He trusted Olivia, yes, but he couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that had been building inside him. He had no concrete reason to doubt her, but the inconsistencies were adding up, and he couldn't push the feeling away. He decided to let it go, hoping it was just his overactive imagination. But deep down, Sam knew that the perfect life he thought he had was starting to unravel, and he was too afraid to see where it would lead. Over the next few weeks, Sam couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was off in his marriage. Olivia's behavior had become even more erratic. She would often disappear for hours without explanation, leaving Sam to wonder where she was. When she was home, she seemed distracted, as if her mind were somewhere else. The small signs that had once seemed trivial now seemed like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. Sam tried to confront her about it, but each time, Olivia brushed him off with a vague excuse. Work was stressful, or she was meeting friends, or simply she was tired. But the more she dismissed him, the more his suspicions deepened. One evening, Sam found himself at the kitchen table again, staring at the pile of receipts from their trip to the Bahamas. It was late, and Olivia had gone out for yet another girls' night that Sam had not been invited to. He felt a strange mix of frustration and helplessness as he sifted through the papers. His mind kept going back to the name he had found, this mysterious figure who had somehow become entwined in their vacation. Sam couldn't understand how he hadn't noticed earlier, but the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. There were too many signs, too many little things he'd overlooked. He decided, against his better judgment, to take a deeper look at Olivia's phone the next time she wasn't around. He knew he was invading her privacy, but his growing distrust overpowered his guilt. That night, as Olivia took a shower, Sam quickly grabbed her phone from the countertop and unlocked it using the pattern she had never changed. His hands trembled slightly, the weight of what he was about to do pressing on him. The phone was filled with messages, just as he had expected, but the contents of those messages were nothing like what he had anticipated. There were texts, yes, but they weren't from friends or family as he had assumed. Instead, they were from men, many men. Some were businesslike, but many others were flirtatious, with intimate undertones that made Sam's stomach churn. He clicked through the threads, each one more shocking than the last. The names were unfamiliar, but the tone of the conversations was unmistakable. Olivia had been involved with these men for months, if not longer. She had been meeting them, exchanging private messages, and even making plans for future encounters. The most disturbing part, however, was the money. The messages were filled with casual references to significant sums, payments for services, and talk of cash being exchanged. Sam's heart raced. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. His wife wasn't just being unfaithful, she was living a completely different life, one that was far darker than he could have ever imagined. Olivia wasn't just an interior designer. She was involved in something that Sam could barely comprehend. She was an escort, trading her time and body for money. The thought made his chest tighten. Sam spent the next few hours scrolling through her messages, unable to tear himself away. There were appointments scheduled at high-end hotels with details that made it clear this wasn't a one-time mistake. Olivia had been leading this double life for months, maybe even longer. Each message painted a more vivid picture of a woman he didn't recognize. This wasn't the caring, loving wife he had married. This was someone else entirely. Someone who had carefully hidden her secrets behind a facade of normalcy. When Olivia returned home later that night, Sam could hardly look at her. The distance between them had never felt so wide. He wanted to confront her, demand answers, but something held him back. The truth was too much to bear, and he wasn't sure how he would survive the fallout once everything was exposed. For the first time, Sam realized that his world was about to change in a way he couldn't control. The weight of the discovery hung heavily on Sam's chest for days. He couldn't focus on anything, his mind constantly returning to the images and messages he had uncovered. Olivia's betrayal was no longer just a nagging suspicion. It was a painful reality that consumed every thought. As he went through the motions of his daily life, his mind would drift to the phone in his pocket, the messages he hadn't deleted, the truth that now seemed undeniable. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Sam tried to act normal when Olivia was around, but the tension between them was suffocating. The small, meaningless interactions that once filled their days now felt like a hollow performance. Olivia had no idea that Sam had uncovered her secret life, and that in itself was a bitter pill to swallow. He hated the idea of being in the dark about his own marriage, living in a house with a woman who was so deeply entrenched in lies. The woman he had trusted and loved for so long had been deceiving him in the most profound way. Unable to carry the burden of his discovery alone, Sam made a decision. He would hire a private investigator. The thought of paying someone to dig into Olivia's life felt like a betrayal of its own, but Sam didn't know how else to proceed. He had to know the full extent of what was going on. His marriage, his whole life, was built on the foundation of trust, and that foundation had cracked. He needed answers. The investigator, a seasoned professional named Michael, assured Sam that he would conduct the search discreetly. Michael had dealt with cases like this before, and his demeanor was calm, almost reassuring. Sam gave him as much information as he could about Olivia's habits, her work schedule, and the names he had found in her phone. Michael took detailed notes, promising to follow up within a week. Sam barely slept that week, his mind constantly racing with possibilities. Was Olivia truly living this secret life in its entirety? How far did it go? A week later, Michael contacted Sam with a report. The investigator had followed Olivia, tracking her movements and documenting everything he had found. The evidence was overwhelming. Olivia had been frequenting high-end hotels in the city, meeting men, some familiar, some strangers. These weren't casual encounters. The photos Michael had obtained showed Olivia entering hotels, always dressed in expensive clothes and with an air of confidence that Sam hadn't known her to have. It was clear that this wasn't just an affair, this was a calculated, ongoing pattern. As the investigator detailed more of Olivia's activities, Sam's stomach turned. Olivia wasn't just meeting men for one-night stands. She was engaged in a sophisticated arrangement. She had been working as an escort for over 2 years, cultivating relationships with wealthy clients, all while keeping up the image of a devoted wife at home. Sam felt as though the ground beneath him was slipping away. His mind struggled to reconcile the woman he had married with the person he was now learning about. The details became even more disturbing as Michael revealed the financial side of Olivia's double life. Sam learned that she had been receiving payments, substantial ones, in exchange for her services. Some of her clients were powerful men, business executives, doctors, even politicians. Sam couldn't believe what he was hearing. His wife, the woman he had shared his life with, had been living a secret life fueled by money and deception. Olivia had built a world outside of their marriage, a world that Sam had never been a part of, and he was left wondering how long she had been keeping him in the dark. Sam felt numb. The betrayal cut deep, but it wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the realization that his entire life had been based on a lie. As the truth unfolded, it became clear that Olivia had been playing a dangerous game for a long time. The woman Sam had trusted so completely had been manipulating him, living a life of luxury funded by her hidden dealings. Sam was no longer sure who the real Olivia was. The woman he thought he knew was now a stranger, and with each passing day, that realization became harder to accept. The life they had built together felt like an illusion, and Sam was left with nothing but the painful task of figuring out how to move forward. The days following the discovery felt like a blur to Sam. He couldn't escape the images in his mind, the photographs of Olivia, the messages, the cold truth that his wife had been living a double life. He wanted to confront her, to finally put an end to the lies, but something kept him from acting on impulse. He couldn't bring himself to face her just yet. What if she denied everything? What if she twisted the truth to make him seem like the villain? He had already seen how calm she had been when he first uncovered small signs of her behavior. He wondered if she would somehow manage to downplay everything, making him question his own perceptions. But that night, as Olivia returned home from one of her meetings, Sam knew that it was time. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he had married and loved, had been living a lie for far too long. The trust between them was shattered, and there was no going back. Olivia walked through the door, her usual smile on her face as she kissed him hello. It was almost like nothing had changed. Sam watched her for a moment, trying to find the woman he had loved so deeply, but what he saw instead was a stranger, someone who had fooled him for years. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with a tension that neither of them could deny. Sam didn't waste any time. He handed her the file that Michael had put together, the photos, the hotel receipts, and the messages. Olivia's face changed instantly. For a moment she stood there stunned, almost as if she couldn't comprehend what was happening. She stared at the pages, then back at Sam, her expression one of disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. It was as if she had never anticipated the moment would come. Finally, she began to speak, but her words weren't filled with remorse. Instead, she was defensive, almost cold. She explained that it wasn't what Sam thought, that he didn't understand, that everything she had done was for their future, for the life they had built together. She told him she had been trying to balance her work with their marriage, that he couldn't possibly understand the pressure she was under. Sam listened, his heart racing, but the more Olivia spoke, the more his anger began to grow. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even really admitting to what she had done. She claimed she had been doing this for years, that she had no choice but to continue this life to maintain the luxuries they had come to expect. She told him how she felt trapped by the facade they had built, how the lifestyle she wanted couldn't be sustained by the money Sam made as a lawyer alone. To her, the luxury, the power, and the excitement of the other life were too alluring to give up. Sam was horrified not only by the fact that Olivia had lied to him for so long, but also by the sheer arrogance in her words. She had justified her actions, turned her betrayal into something she believed was necessary. Sam tried to speak, to reason with her, but the conversation quickly became a bitter argument, with Olivia defending her actions at every turn. She seemed almost relieved to have it all out in the open, as though she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The more Sam listened, the more disgusted he felt. He had always seen Olivia as the woman he could trust with his life, the person who was supposed to stand by him through thick and thin, but now she was justifying her actions with selfishness and deceit. He could see it now, the manipulation, the careful way she had crafted a life behind his back, all the while making him believe everything was fine. At some point, Sam simply couldn't take it anymore. His heart was breaking, and yet the anger within him burned hotter than ever. This wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal that ran so much deeper, touching every part of their lives together. Olivia wasn't the woman he thought she was. The truth was far worse than he had ever imagined. With a shaking hand, Sam took a deep breath and said the words he had been dreading. He told Olivia he was done. He couldn't be married to someone who had so little respect for him, for their marriage, for the life they had shared. The room felt like it was closing in on him as the finality of his decision settled in. Olivia stared at him, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. She tried to argue, to make him reconsider, but Sam was already certain. He knew that nothing she said could undo the betrayal. The life they had together was over. The days after Sam's confrontation with Olivia were the hardest he had ever experienced. His mind was a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, and disbelief. He had lived a lie for years, and the woman he thought he knew was nothing like he imagined. Every corner of their home now felt foreign, a place filled with memories that were no longer just happy but tainted by the realization of what had been happening behind closed doors. The divorce proceedings were swift. Sam didn't hesitate. He filed the papers soon after the confrontation. Olivia, though initially shocked, had become strangely calm. There was no frantic pleading, no attempt to win him back, just an unsettling acceptance that their marriage was over. The woman he had shared his life with seemed almost relieved, her cold detachment speaking volumes more than any words she could say. She had lived two lives for so long, and now that everything had been exposed, the weight of her secrets seemed to no longer burden her. Olivia moved out of their home a few weeks later, but the damage she had done lingered in every room. Sam found it hard to let go of the life he had built with her, the memories of their vacations, their inside jokes, and their dreams for the future. It all felt like a cruel joke now. He couldn't understand how someone who had once been so loving and devoted could have been so different underneath. It wasn't just the affair that devastated him. It was the realization that Olivia had built a world of lies, a world he wasn't a part of. Despite the painful divorce, Sam tried to move on. He focused on his career, threw himself into work to keep his mind occupied. Yet no matter how hard he worked, he couldn't escape the feeling of loss that gnawed at him. At times he felt as though he had lost a part of himself, the person he used to be before the truth came crashing down. The life he had so carefully constructed with Olivia was no longer a source of comfort, but a reminder of everything he had been deceived into believing. Then, one day, as if to compound the hurt, Sam received an unexpected call from one of Olivia's clients. It was Richard, the tech entrepreneur who had reached out to Sam during the divorce proceedings, offering him even more disturbing information. Richard claimed he had been in love with Olivia for months, that he had been secretly watching Sam and Olivia together, convinced that Sam wasn't the right person for her. He said that Olivia had manipulated him too, using her charm to keep him on the hook for financial support, even while pretending to be devoted to her marriage. Richard had seen Sam as an obstacle to Olivia's true desires, and now, with the divorce finalized, he wanted to offer Sam the evidence he had gathered over the months. Richard sent Sam files, some of which included intimate videos of Olivia meeting with other wealthy men, showing how she had cleverly played both sides, manipulating not just Sam, but her clients as well. It was a sickening twist of fate for Sam to learn that not only had Olivia been betraying him, but she had been using everyone around her, all while maintaining the image of a perfect, loving wife. Olivia's motives, her ambitions, her actions, they were all now laid bare before him in the harshest light possible. The revelation made Sam feel even more hollow. He had already endured the heartbreak of betrayal, but now it seemed as though Olivia had been a puppet master, pulling strings in the shadows of their marriage. The lies she had woven were far deeper and darker than he had ever imagined. As the days went by, Sam realized that healing would be a long and painful journey. He was no longer the person he had been when he married Olivia. The man he had been, trusting and carefree, had been replaced with someone more cautious, more guarded. But as time passed, Sam began to rebuild. He found solace in his friends and family, who had stood by him during the darkest times. Slowly, the pain of betrayal began to fade, replaced by a quiet strength he hadn't known he possessed. But there was one thing that continued to haunt him. As Olivia disappeared from his life, he wondered just how far had she gone to keep her secrets hidden, and how many other lives had she ruined in the process. The truth was more chilling than Sam could ever have imagined, and as he moved forward, he couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. He had been exposed to the darkness of a woman's secret world, one that he would never be able to forget. As the months went by, Sam found himself slowly rebuilding his life. The divorce, though painful, had freed him from the constant turmoil of living with Olivia's secrets. Her betrayal had fractured his heart, but it also ignited a resilience in him that he hadn't known existed. He poured himself into his work, focusing on the cases and clients that had once excited him, but now they provided a sense of purpose that kept him from sinking further into despair. Each day, he took small steps forward, moving away from the shadow Olivia had cast over him. But the road to recovery wasn't smooth. There were moments when Sam would catch himself staring out of a window, lost in thought, wondering how he had missed the signs. How had Olivia, the woman he had trusted so completely, managed to hide her true self for so long? The images of her with other men, her cold detachment during their last conversation, haunted him in quiet moments. The question of who Olivia really was, and what her true motivations had been, lingered in his mind. He realized that the woman he had loved had been a facade, and it would take time to stop seeing her as the person he thought she was. The reality was that their entire relationship had been built on lies, and letting go of that illusion was harder than he had anticipated. Sam eventually decided to sell the house, the home that had once been a symbol of their perfect life together. It had become a place filled with too many memories of a love he could no longer trust. The process of selling it felt like a symbolic closing of a chapter, a way to truly move on. He moved into a smaller, more modest apartment, one that was his own, where he could start fresh without the weight of the past looming over him. There were days when Sam would run into people from his old life, mutual friends who had been blindsided by the news of the divorce. They all had the same questions, the same stunned reactions. They couldn't believe that Olivia, the woman they had all admired, was capable of the lies Sam had uncovered. But Sam didn't feel the need to explain himself to them. The truth was out, and he had no desire to relive the details. As time went on, Sam found himself surrounded by a new circle of friends, people who understood the complexities of life and relationships, and who didn't judge him for his past. Slowly, he allowed himself to trust again, to open up to the possibility of love in the future. But there was a lingering caution in him, a wariness that had been born from the heartbreak of his marriage. Olivia had broken something inside him that would never fully heal. Still, he held on to hope that someday he would find peace, and that the scars left by Olivia's betrayal would fade, not completely, but enough to allow him to move forward, no longer defined by the woman who had shattered his world. As he stood on his balcony one quiet evening, looking out at the city skyline, Sam realized that he had survived, and in surviving, he had discovered something far more important: his own strength. The journey had been painful, but it had led him to a place where he could finally breathe again. The past no longer had control over him. The future, though uncertain, was his to shape, and for the first time in a long while, Sam was ready to embrace it.